Welkom terug hier op GROOTplaas. So ons gas in die ateljee is Prof Claude Sabeta en hy is een van die mede-professors in Virologie aan die Universiteit van Pretoria se Fakulteit van Diergeneeskunde. Prof, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Tupi.
So let's just quickly chat about the awesome work that you guys are doing over there. But firstly, we need to create some context, and we're going to be speaking about rabies. In Afrikaans, it's hondsdolheid. But who's mostly affected by rabies?
Well, when you look at the data, you find that children under the age of 15 are mostly affected. I think 50% of the cases actually affect children under 15 years of age.
So is there a specific reason that children are mostly the affected parties?
I think because they spend most of the time playing with the dogs, they take care of the dogs, and during contact with the dogs, if they're infected, then they get rabies.
How common is rabies in South African animals?
Rabies is very common. Just to give you a context, when you look at the number of cases that are tested at the reference labs in South Africa, you find that about 40% of those samples will be positive for rabies.
So you guys are doing extremely interesting research. Let's talk about what exactly is post-exposure prophylaxis, and we'll refer to it as PEP this morning, and why it's critical in treating rabies infections.
Thanks, Dupi, for that question. You see, I'll start by how rabies becomes successfully infecting a host. So it enters through a bite wound and then replicates in the nerve system and enters the central nervous system and then moves towards the brain. So the point of post-exposure is to deny the entry of the virus into the nervous system so that it doesn't replicate.
And this is now post-exposure.
Sure.
Why is it critical, the research in treating this?
It's critical because once the virus enters the central nervous system, it's 100% fatal. We can only act on it at the point of entry. So that's why we need to administer post-exposure if someone is bitten by a rabid animal.
Okay, and can you explain antibodies? You guys are doing extremely interesting stuff when it comes to producing antibodies in tobacco plants. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So this project started as a World Health Organization initiative in which some reference laboratories globally had very interesting neutralizing antibodies. And to name one is one called E559, generated from FLI in Germany. So what we did with the colleagues here, the CSR, was to produce or assemble that particular antibody in plant systems. So this is where it comes. So an area called biofarming, where you can generate proteins in a plant.
So we are used to having viruses and what do you call it? All of the work that's been done in virus studies are being done on human proteins or natural proteins, but this is now in plant-based.
Sure, it's now in a plant system.
So does it give you the same kind of results?
Yes, we have tested. What we currently use for PEP is called human rabies immunoglobulin, developed or extracted from plasma, of human plasma, for people who have been vaccinated against rabies. So in this case, we found that the H-rig and the monoclonal antibody generated in plants were equally efficacious. They could neutralize or they could eliminate the virus.
So is that part of the research that you guys are doing as well?
Yes.
You're currently using tobacco plants to create the antibodies and use the proteins in. But are there any other plants that could maybe give us a more structured process?
I'm not sure. I think tobacco has the advantage of it's a cost-effective, it's a very efficient platform, as well as it can produce lots of material within a short time. And also remember, tobacco is not a food crop, so there is no risk of food contamination.
Okay. How important is that whatever research you guys are doing and the process that you are using, that there is no contamination, or similar to what we saw in COVID a few years ago, a spread of a disease that escapes a laboratory?
Well, it's important because when you look at the current monoclonal antibodies that are being used, or HRIG, it's often in short supply. It's also very costly. I mean, in South Africa, it will cost you about 1,400 rand for a shot of HRIG, and there may be some batch-to-batch variation, as well as possibility of contamination with some blood-borne pathogens. So alternative options such as plant systems override those particular disadvantages.
And that's also providing a cheaper alternative, especially in the financial landscape, which is South Africa.
Sure. I'm not sure whether we have really done the economics, but I'm sure it could be one of the...
So that'll be the next part of the process, is seeing that there's a product that works and you can successfully produce this product,
sure,
and then looking at getting it to people as cheaply as possible.
Yes. So we have shown that it can work in animals, it can protect animals, it can also work it can also neutralize viruses in cell culture.
All right. Prof, we're going to keep on chatting to you about rabies in a little bit. Ons gas vandag in die ateljee natuurlik Prof Claude Sabeta, en hy is meer professor in Virologie aan die Universiteit van Pretoria se Fakulteit van Diergeneeskunde. Maar net voordat ons aangaan, GROOTplaas landboukalender nou vir jou geborg deur FR+.
FR+ laat nie net rykdom groei nie, hulle beskerm dit ook met eksklusiewe beleggingsopsies wat volgens FR+ se skatting tot 22% per jaar voor belasting of 12% na belasting kan bied, is finansiële groei binne jou bereik. Versterk jou toekoms, verseker jou nalatenskap. Besoek frplus.co.za.
Hy is 'n gerespekteerde joernalis wat meer oor sy land en sy mense wil leer.
Ek sal like as onverlik en sê hulle moet die plek oopmaak vir kleerlinge, ons praat ook in Afrikaans.
Dis nie net die praat nie, jy moet leef ook in Afrikaans.
Dis 'n mengelmoes van Suid-Afrikaners, elk met hul eie stories.
Ek het nou nie eens meer 'n trouring nie, van die moes ek ook weggee, want hy is die kos.
Gowan ontbloot.
Welkom terug op GROOTplaas, en saam met ons in die ateljee vandag Prof Claude Sabeta. Hy is 'n mede-professor in Virologie aan die Universiteit van Pretoria se Fakulteit van Diergeneeskunde, en ons praat 'n bietjie oor hondsdolheid soos ons dit ken in Afrikaans, of natuurlik vir hierdie spesifieke onderhoud, rabies, which is quite interesting. So it remains a major issue, one of the major issues, and I think any study that's being done in South Africa, there's always the situation of being under-resourced, underfunded to get these studies done. How could plant-based PP, and we spoke about that earlier, post-exposure prophylaxis, transform access to life-saving treatments in communities?
Thanks, Dubi, for that question. Definitely, rabies remains under-resourced, or not majorly funded in Africa, in South Africa as well. And one of the reasons is our data for rabies surveillance is doesn't demonstrate that rabies is a very important disease. So in ourselves as researchers or as we don't show that rabies is a very important disease. The data doesn't demonstrate that. It's always underreported. It's one of the most underreported diseases if you look at it. So that's why when you look at funding and other areas, funders don't look at it as a very important disease because the data doesn't demonstrate that. But having said that, you find that Africa and Asia, that's where we have the highest burden of the disease. In any 1 year, it is expected or it is estimated that about 60,000 people succumb to rabies every year. And that's probably under reporting. It can range from 25,000 to 160,000. So
and it's actually quite easy with the right research and reporting to bring those numbers down.
Sure. So when you look at it, it can be brought down by managing bite contact victims, by giving them timely post-exposure treatment and also making vaccinations available. If I may touch on an exposure risk in which some of the bite contact victims are given, we have what is called a category 3 exposure. What it means is that a dog or a rabid animal, it could be wildlife, can inflict a very deep wound. And that requires administration of human rabies immunoglobulin. And in this case, the alternative option that we have demonstrated in plants. Then what it does, what the HRIG does, it provides what is called passive immunization. It's essentially inactivating the virus at the point of bite. Thereafter, you also give the bite contacts a vaccine at regular intervals, I think at about four doses, at specified time intervals.
Times, yeah.
Yes. So, but as you know, the vaccine will only elicit immune response a week at least after that administration. So you can see the very important role that HRIG is playing. It's inactivating the virus at the point of bite immediately after exposure.
So you mentioned that the most cases of rabies, and especially in your research, have been found in Africa and Asia. Is there a correlation between these specific places and the fact that we have so many stray animals that contract rabies?
Yes, you are touching on the point. What has happened in Europe, dog rabies has been eliminated by vaccination, but they still have wildlife rabies. On the corollary, in Africa and Asia, our vaccination levels are not getting to the targeted levels that we expect to maintain sufficient antibodies to minimize infection. So that is our only problem, that we are not targeting or getting to those levels that can completely eliminate the disease from our dog populations.
So for the communities, would it be necessary for us to eliminate rabies in our household animals or dogs at least? Wildlife is going to be a little bit more difficult in South Africa because there is so much. But would the communities need to start, understanding what this virus is and also the treatment of it?
Knowledge is very key. But also, if we eliminate rabies at the source, which is the domestic dog, then it means we also have reduced human fatalities. Okay, so there is a very good relationship between elimination of dog rabies and rabies in humans. So that's why all our programs should target dog populations.
Okay, so that's where it needs to start. One, education and understanding what rabies really is, and then how to get rid of it in our dog population.
Sure.
Professor, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it, and thank you for the interesting research that you guys are doing at the University of Pretoria.
No, thank you, Dupi. It was a pleasure.
Professor Claude Sabeta, en hy is 'n mede-professor van Virologie en hy is al by die Universiteit van Pretoria se Fakulteit van Veeartsenykunde.